session in the few hours that we work during our breaks and lunch, and we do have a program that is starting now, and we hope that with the discussions, with the deliberations, hope at least by around 1400 hours South African time, we should be able to. In saying that, let me first allow Dr. Botshabelo Maja, he's the Deputy Director General at the National School of Government, to welcome and open the event.
Welcome to the launch of the Chandler Good Government Index for 2025. We hope to have a very engaging session this morning. We thought we should do this launch and have this conversation. We will be having two panel sessions because the issue of good government is not just a by-the-way issue. It's an issue that goes into the core of societal development. It goes to the core of how countries move forward. In our case, as the African continent, it goes to the core of how far we can be able to move as a continent. In my entire life, I have never been exposed to any report on governance that puts Africa at the forefront. And I don't know whether I will end up dying before there's a report that can say Africa is leading in this field. If you look, and we will share the report with you, it doesn't make us look good on the African continent. You know, South Africa is always ranked amongst the top countries on the continent. So in the report, you will see that we are ranked in South Africa as number 5th. But when you look at our ranking internationally, we go right to the bottom, number 70-something. It's not good. And we have internalized and normalized this thing that it is to be expected. Even the World Bank, when they produce a report, you know before reading them that Africa and its countries will be at the bottom. At some point, we must have a conversation about what is it that we must do differently, that which we have not done in the last 100 years, that could make us competitive. You know, these countries that lead in reports such as this, it is not in their genes to lead. They were not born to lead. They just do certain things that help them put their next step forward. And of course, we in Africa always do certain things that make sure that we talked about, but at least 1 or 2 points that will say this one thing was never done. If we try it, it might help. In South Africa, even though we're number 5 on the continent, internationally, we are also, I think, number 76. Here's the thing, though, that's very interesting. When you look closely at the report, if you look at the specific area of helping people rise, South Africa is 7th from the bottom. So out of 120 countries, we are number 7 from the bottom. And the thing about helping people rise is not for me just one of those indices, like all the other indices in the report. If you cannot help people rise, everything else falls apart.
And one of that is with the Chandler Institute of Governance. We've been working very closely with the leadership, with the colleagues. And so when we were approached by the Dean of the Chandler Academy of Governance about this launch, we raised our hands as the National School of Government and we said, yes, as a partner, we would be happy to host an event with yourself here in Pretoria. And so it's an important milestone for us because partnerships are the way to go. And especially in the space that we are in, the public service training and development, we need to learn from each other. And what better way than having this type of publication, if you are familiar with the publication and you know some of the other publications of the Chandler Institute, you will know that there's a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of sharing that we can, that we can take from there. So today, I think the launch of this publication, and as Dr. Maja said, our own introspection and reflection as the African continent, as the region, what do we take away from this? What do we take out of this and what does it mean for us in terms of our own development. I suppose the next item is probably the curtain raiser at Dinesh, because I'm going to invite Mr. Dinesh Naidu. He's the Director for Knowledge at the Chandler Institute. And of course, he's going to be sort of unveiling or releasing this publication that you all have in your hands, and just talk a little bit more, some of the key insights for us, but really, what are some of the results, the trends, the opportunities, the challenges that face us on the African continent, including something that deals with South Africa. We have a good, we have a good audience. Many of the colleagues are still coming in, as well as online. Many, please be active to those participants online. You will post questions that will be able to deal with the panelists. We have many amongst us here. I must acknowledge Commissioner Mavuso from the South African Public Service Commission. It's another close partner of Chandler, working with our sister institution, the Department of Public Service and Administration. And as this portfolio of public service and administration, we work very closely with the colleagues at Chandler. Having said that, let me officially invite Mr. Dinesh Naidu. We had a chat this morning, and this is his first trip to Africa. It's certainly first trip to South Africa, so we hope so far it's a pleasant one, and one of many more to come. Over to you, Mr. Naidu. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today, I would like to cast a spotlight on different African countries that are delivering world-class results in certain areas and outperforming their peers in Europe, in Asia, and in the Americas. Next, while these beacons of excellence are scattered across different domains in different countries, we also see that the biggest challenges are clustered and common in many countries. So I will reveal the 3 biggest challenges facing the region based on our index. And then finally, I will share some experiences from my own home country, which is Singapore, on why high-performance government matters and the governance competition that countries find themselves in today. All right, with that, let's dive in and see the results of the Chandler Good Government Index 2025. This is the ranking of the 28 African countries that are found in the index. The index itself contains 120 countries, and the top 3 countries in the index are Singapore, Denmark, and Norway. Amongst the 28 African countries, the top 3 are Mauritius, Rwanda, and Botswana. South Africa comes in 5th in the ranking and 77th overall in the index. But many people wonder, isn't national prosperity the most important factor? Shouldn't we be pursuing GDP growth in order to uplift our societies? How important really is good government? That's a fair question. And we can see that outcomes for citizens in high-income countries are better. They have access to better jobs, higher salaries. Their governments can raise revenues more easily to pay for services and infrastructure that their societies need. So what we did is we plotted a graph. On the vertical axis, we have outcomes. These are the outcomes of good government, what we talked about just now. The most important things for citizens. We took 10 indicators like health, education, employment, and we charted this on a vertical axis. And then on the horizontal axis, we are comparing this against prosperity, which is GDP per capita. And indeed, it's true. There is a correlation. The richer countries, which are on the right side of this graph, tend to have higher outcomes, better outcomes for their citizens. And the lower income countries are towards the bottom left of the graph, delivering poorer outcomes for their citizens. So far, no big surprise. It looks like prosperity is important. But we at the Chandler Institute of Governance believe that good government matters more than any other factor in determining if nations thrive. And we believe that excellence in governance is not out of reach to any country. So, dramatic, so we charted the capabilities of good government. These are the 6 pillars of government capabilities that you will find in the index. And we plotted this on the horizontal axis instead of GDP. And we compared it with the outcomes that we talked about earlier. So you will see here, again, there is a strong correlation between government capabilities and outcomes for citizens. In fact, the correlation is stronger for government capabilities compared to prosperity. So our point is that, of course, correlation is not causation, but we can see that government capabilities are incredibly important and more meaningful than perhaps chasing GDP growth as a silver bullet. And even if you wanted to do that, you would ask yourself, how do we chase GDP growth? So it still comes back to government capabilities. Now, I want to start with celebrating success. Celebrating success is very important. It encourages those who are succeeding to persevere and to continue improving. It shows the rest of us a glimpse of what high-performance government looks like and makes it very tangible for us when we see it around. For peers and neighbors, it inspires us to believe that success is possible. For those who want to go deeper and study these success stories, we can try to learn from them and replicate their success. And of course, there is this idea of expanding adjacent possibilities. This is the idea that you can build smaller, easier, incremental steps that build on existing achievements in order to drive innovation, to drive improvement, and to drive growth. So keep that in mind as we look at some of these success stories and think about what are the possibilities or opportunities to build on these successes. Let's begin here in South Africa. If you go to our index website, you will find a country profile page for each and every country in the index. It lists not just the country's overall rank in the index, which is 77 for South Africa, but its rank for each and every pillar, the 7 pillars, as well as the 35 indicators. From this, we can see that these are South Africa's 4 strongest pillars. In these 4 areas, South Africa is performing in the top half of the index and outperforming its own score at 77. So these 4 pillars are robust policies and laws, strong institutions, attractive marketplace, global influence, and reputation. The attractive marketplace pillar is especially interesting because South Africa has been improving well and steadily in this particular pillar. In 2023, 2 years ago, South Africa was ranked 68th on this pillar, but this year it is 45th. So that is good growth to recognize. Now I want to dive into some of the individual indicators where South Africa is performing at a world-class level. The first is called logistics competence. So this is based on a survey of professionals in the logistics industry, right? So they might be freight forwarders and other logistics providers. This is a survey conducted globally of professionals in terms of the quality of logistics in their country as well as the countries that they trade with, because these people would have good awareness of logistics abilities in many different countries. South Africa is ranked 17th out of 120 countries here, which is quite remarkable. And it outperforms countries like Ireland and New Zealand, and in fact ties with Australia and Norway on this score. And you can see what this indicator is measuring: efficient border management, quality of infrastructure, and all of these elements that are important. So South Africa is operating at a very high standard in this area. The next indicator is called the Nation Brand Indicator. So this is looking at a nation's profile and the degree to which the government is contributing to this and managing this capability. This indicator is based on quantitative data that looks at tourism brand tags with most online searches from international tourists, as well as the annual average number of international meetings in that country. On this indicator, South Africa is ranked 18th, and it beats countries that are otherwise very highly ranked, including Singapore, Denmark, and the United Arab Emirates. A third indicator that I want to highlight is transparency. This is a very important indicator. It is based on quantitative, qualitative, and survey data. It looks at transparency in terms of public procurement, laws, data, and policy making, as well as the timeliness and availability and amount of budget information that is made public. So South Africa performs very well here at 22nd out of 120, and it beats countries like Luxembourg, Japan, Austria, and Iceland. Of course, South Africa is one of 5 upper middle income African countries in our index, but these stories of excellence extend beyond to other countries. Rwanda, as many of you know, is a star in terms of governance in Africa. It is one of only 2 countries in the top half of the 120 countries. It is also one of only 2 countries that has shown improvement since 2021. And amongst all the lower income countries, countries classified as low income in the index, Rwanda is the best performing. Rwanda has many strengths, but I wanted to highlight the attractive marketplace pillar, where it is the strongest in Africa, and it is ranked 37th out of 120. This places it higher than South Korea, other emerging economies like Chile and Slovenia, and just behind China, which is an economic powerhouse. So this is very impressive. You will see here the 4 indicators that make up this pillar: property rights, attracting investments, logistics competence. But the one I want to highlight is stable business regulations. Because on this indicator, Rwanda is ranked 7th in the world. And it is ahead of countries like Denmark and Norway, which is really quite remarkable. Then I want to spotlight Tanzania. Tanzania, along with Rwanda, are the only 2 countries that have shown improvement since 2021. Tanzania is especially interesting and strong on the financial stewardship pillar, where it is ranked 57 out of 120 countries. This pillar is very interesting because it is a pillar that countries around the world have been struggling with in recent years, in all regions and at all income levels. We'll talk a little bit about more why that is the case. But for now, I want to share that Tanzania's performance here is better than the performance of countries like the United States and Italy, and just behind France. Amongst the indicators within this pillar, Tanzania performs very well on the spending efficiency indicator. This is an indicator we developed that tracks the budget, the expenditure on health and education, and compares it to the outcomes for health and education to see the efficiency. And on this, Tanzania ranks 25th in the index, ahead of countries like Denmark and Germany. So again, very remarkable. So the index is useful for identifying areas of excellence, areas of success, and helping us to think about how to replicate them and expand beyond them. But it is also good as the diagnostic toolkit to quickly identify weaker areas. And this can help to prompt and frame honest discussions about improvements that are needed. It can also help governments and leaders to prioritize areas. Let's look at South Africa. These are the two pillars where South Africa performs weakest. Financial stewardship, and as we heard, helping people rise. In fact, for some of the indicators here, South Africa is at the very bottom or very near the bottom of the index, including important indicators like personal safety, income distribution, and employment. Zooming out and looking at all the 28 African countries in our index, we can see certain trends. The 14 countries on the right, on the left, I beg your pardon, are the better performing ones. So they are ranked in order. And you will see simply from the colors, there are certain patterns. There are certain pillars where the countries are consistently weaker. These are the big, consistent problem areas for Africa. Financial stewardship, which I mentioned, is a huge problem around the world. Global influence and reputation, and of course, the very important one, helping people rise. Helping people rise is the pillar which is most directly relevant to people. A government cannot claim to be good if it is not delivering good outcomes for its people. Most of our pillars have only 4 or 5 indicators, but the helping people rise pillar has 10 indicators. Just a bit about the index methodology. The total score for each country is the average of the 35 indicators. So it is heavily weighted by the helping people rise pillar, and rightly so. So if you're trying to gain it as well and help your country improve in the rankings, this is the most important one to focus on, which of course we would be focusing on naturally. Financial stewardship is interesting. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many countries had to increase their public expenditure because of the crisis, and this has worsened government budget deficits, government debt. Higher interest rates have made this more problematic. Other events have also worsened this problem. For example, the war in Ukraine has led many countries to increase their defense spending. So this is a challenge in many countries. Finally, we have global influence and reputation. Now, this might seem to some like a luxury or an indulgence. If we are focused on improving people's quality of life and getting basics right, what is global influence and reputation? But we have included it in this index because we believe it is critically important to all countries, and governments must pay attention to this, because governments manage diplomatic networks, they manage international trade, they manage brand, and this creates a space for countries to perform and to thrive, and governments that are unable to get out of this a poor position in this area will struggle to improve overall. And the fact that this pillar is so particularly bad for Africa is something worth looking at. Now I want to talk a little bit about the global governance competition. Whether we like it or not, or whether we are aware of it or not, governments are in competition with each other. And I'm not just talking about competing with each other for investments or tourists or things like that from foreign countries. A bigger competition might actually be for our own country's people, our own entrepreneurs, our own inventors and investors, scientists, talented professionals, scholars, and even our tourists. Because when governments are losing the governance competition with other countries, these resources, assets, energies flow to other countries. People will bring their passion, their creativity, their money, their inventions to other countries where they think they can thrive, and those countries will benefit. So this is why we believe it is so important to be aware of this competition. In our index, some countries work hard to improve, and their raw score, so there's a difference between your raw score and your ranking, their raw score may improve, which reflects the improvement they have made. But they find they still fall in the ranking, and they come and ask us, why did we fall? We made an improvement. And one of the reasons is you are improving, but other countries are improving faster than you. So that is something we should be aware of as well. This chart shows the governance gap between different sub-regions of the world. Yes, we can see at the very bottom of the table, we have Sub-Saharan Africa together with South Asia. And we can see the gaps between the different sub-regions. But beyond the relative difference between the sub-regions, I want to draw your attention to the trend lines. Look at East Asia. Look at Southeast Asia. Look at the Middle East. These are sub-regions that have been making steady progress. And in fact, countries from these regions, Mongolia, Vietnam, Jordan, are amongst the most improved countries in our index. So we need to be aware of this competition. Other regions, other countries are on the march. That should spur us, and it also probably means there's much we can learn from these countries. I want to share a little bit about my own country, Singapore. Singapore became independent in 1965. In that year, our GDP per capita was very similar to South Africa. But when Singapore became independent, many people were concerned, including many leaders, that it was not a viable country. It is a city-state. It is the world's last true city-state. It does not have a hinterland. And in 1965, people didn't believe that such a country was viable. There was no domestic demand. So Singapore's leaders, and this is Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore's first Prime Minister, developed a strategy. And it was a strategy to make Singapore a first world oasis within its region. And this involved focusing on all of these dimensions: standards of security, health, efficiency, communications, transportation, education, convenience, making Singapore so robust, so well governed, so efficient that it would draw investments, it would draw talent, it would draw tourists from around the world to come to Singapore and to use it as a hub to explore, to do business in the rest of the region. And this has proven to be a very effective strategy. So this is taking that awareness about the governance competition and trying to use it to advantage. I'm coming to the end of my presentation, but I also wanted to share that organizations like the Chandler Institute of Governance exist to support governments in their journey towards high-performance government. And we do this through our training, through our consultancy, as well as our knowledge products like the Chandler Good Government Index. So if you feel that we could be of use, please do reach out to us. I would also like to invite all of you to explore the index website. There's a lot more data in there. It is interactive. You can benchmark your country, you can explore all of the indicators, and you can have some fun with that. Thank you for your attention. And I would also like to make a request of the audience right now, if you don't mind. Since we are today here at the regional launch of the Chandler Good Government Index 2025, can I request everyone, please, to stand up and hold the report in front of you, and we're going to take a selfie, or what we call a Wi-Fi.
Thank you very much for that, Dinesh. Can I maybe request another round of applause? Wonderful presentation, very good insights, really. Thank you for that, and we really appreciate that. Now, we are reaching time. We are just a few minutes behind. With your indulgence, Dinesh, do you maybe want to take one or two questions, maybe on the report before we delve into the panel discussion? Are you happy with that? There's an opportunity, maybe just any questions that you may have that you wish to raise, comment, something that you're not clear about in the report, something that you maybe want Dinesh to emphasize. There's a mic.
To everyone, my name is Constance Ligaba. I am from the Office of the Premier Income Thing. I would like to find out the challenge you indicate from your report about the category, particularly of helping people rise. I picked up some of the issues which are our current government's priority. Unemployment, gender, and health, particularly as it affects the greater majority of our citizens. My question is, what would be your advisory, if I should call it that, for the public service, particularly to assist government to try and improve in those areas? Thank you.
Thank you. That is a great question. So at the Chandler Institute of Governance, we believe in the importance of institutions, in processes, and capabilities. So policies, which government leaders said, is of course important and is one part of the solution, but good quality policies will not be implemented well if governments do not have the capabilities. So some of the advice or consultancy that we provide involves helping governments and agencies to, for example, design and architect organizations, systems, and processes. And that is a lot of the kind of consultancy work that we do.
Thank you for that, Constance, and thank you for the response, Dinesh. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we can take a short break. We are now at 10:45, so not a huge number. So I think by 11 a.m. we can be back in. Our colleagues will direct you to where coffee and some refreshments are. Let's be back promptly at 11 o'clock so that we can get to the program. We are the School of Government, but we're not going to ring any school bells. We trust that you will make your way back here today. So let's take a short break, and please use the opportunity to network, get to know each other, have a cup of coffee, and we'll see you back at 11 a.m. and we'll start with the first panel discussion. Thank you very much, Dr. Maja. Thank you, Mr. Naidu. Thank you for the first session. Okay.
1, 2, 1, 2. Can you hear me? But can you hear me?
Dr. Physician, can you hear us? Test 1, 2, 3. We should be able to hear you. Speak again. Just test 1, 2, 3. Dr. Physicians?
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Let me just get that guy.
Maybe his audio is off.
Hey?
Maybe his audio is off. Maybe his speakers are on.
No, but I can see that it's, I think we're not getting this.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1.
He speaks, the mic.
Test 1, 2, 3. This one is good. And they say
And the Java.
here also is that we need to, yeah, I think the view that is, so we need to switch it on.
Hi, welcome. Please sit to us.
Just tell him we're getting the sound technician, shortly. Just tell him to give us 2 minutes. Dr. Physicians, please give us 2 minutes. A sound technician will be here soon. Thank you. Dr. Physicians, could you try again? Needs to speak. Yeah, could you try again, please? No. He's not speaking. He's not speaking. She was speaking, but it was pretty low. Okay.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. We'll start shortly. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for taking time to join the session. We've done the sound check.
We're just going to get everyone back into the room. We will on a short break. We will start shortly. Thank you.
Yeah.
See how it goes. We may decide to take the two sessions and break for lunch so that we don't have to come back after lunch. The first panel discussion, part one of it, is around advancing high performance government in Africa. And the panel will look at what it takes to build high performance government in Africa by investing in core public sector capabilities. So Dr. Maja is going to moderate this session. But before we move to that, the one panel member that was supposed to join us, the CEO from Rwanda Governance Board, Dr. Joyce, was not able to join. Instead, she has recorded a video, which we are going to play now. This is her message to all of us. And we will be joined by the Deputy CEO from the Rwanda Governance Board, who will join online. And I'll introduce the other colleagues as well.
Good morning. I would like to begin by thanking the organizers, the moderator, and extend warm greetings to the panelists and distinguished guests. It is my pleasure. I'm Dr. Doris Uikezapika. I'm the Minister and Chief Executive Officer of the Rwanda Governance Board. It is also a privilege to reflect on a subject that defines Africa's future, building high-performance governments. I speak from Rwanda's perspective and Rwanda's journey, a nation that, as you know, only 3 decades ago emerged from one of the darkest tragedies of the 20th century, the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis. In the aftermath of the genocide against the Tutsis, we had to rebuild a country from scratch. And in this rebuilding, we made 3 deliberate choices. We chose to stay together, which is fostering unity as a priority. We chose to be accountable to ourselves, and we chose to think big. It is His Excellency Mr. Paul Kagame, the President of Rwanda, who says that Rwanda may be a small nation, but we are not a small people. And these choices have shaped what we call Rwanda's transformational governance model. It is rooted in unity, justice, accountability, and performance. From the outset, we anchored governance in institutions, not individuals. We created watchdogs such as the Auditor General, the Ombudsman's Office, and created strengthened citizen-centered bodies like the Rwanda Governance Board. We also drew deeply from our culture. Homegrown solutions such as the Church Accords, which brought justice to our people, Abunzi, mediators, which fostered dispute resolutions, Imihigo, there are performance contracts that make accountability visible, Ubudehe and Itorero, which reinforce solidarity and civic responsibility. This blend of modern institutions and homegrown solutions gives citizens a sense of ownership. And it ensures that government is inclusive and not distant. Finally, our long-term visioning from Vision 2020 to Vision 2050 provides a strategic direction, which is positioning Rwanda as a high-income, knowledge-based nation built on good governance and social cohesion. In practice, performance is not a slogan. It is measured, it is tracked, and it is acted upon. The Rwanda Governance Scorecard, which is a homegrown quantifiable index that consistently gauges the state of governance in Rwanda, provides clear accountability and performance management of the government. We also have the Citizen Report Card, which is an annual nationwide survey that helps to collect data on citizens' feedback and participation with the planning and implementation of government strategies. The latest figures show that over 80% of Rwandans are satisfied with services in health, education, and local government. The results are visible. 2 decades of 7 to 8% average growth, over 90% of citizens covered by the national health insurance, and women holding the majority of parliamentary seats, over 60%. Looking ahead, Rwanda is on the course to digitize 100% of public services by 2029. This means eliminating queues, cutting out bureaucracy and red tape, and strengthening transparency. From this journey, I believe Rwanda has at least 3 lessons to offer to Africa. First, capabilities matter more than policies. Many governments have good policies but struggle to translate that into actions. Policies alone do not deliver. Mechanisms like Imihigo ensure accountability at every level of governance and leadership, from the minister in Kigali to the mayor in the village. Second, data must drive governance. Tools like our governance scorecard, citizen report card, and indeed the Chandler Index are not shelf reports. Together, these source strengthen evidence based decision making, improve monitoring, and enhance accountability. They also guide cabinet priorities and budgets. The third lesson would be that institutions must outlast politics. By embedding accountability in law and cultivating citizen ownership and reforms that endure. Looking ahead, Rwanda's next frontier is also Africa's next frontier. We're looking to digitalize governance to make services faster, cheaper, and more transparent. We're looking to strengthen inclusive policy making so that women, youth, and communities are active participants, not passive recipients. And in terms of regional cooperation, Rwanda recognizes that no country prospers in isolation. Peace, trade, and development are collective responsibilities. So, to conclude this, the real question is not whether Africa can achieve high performance governance. The question is how fast can we scale what works? Rwanda's experience proves that even nations once counted as fragile, discounted as failed states, can rise when they choose unity, accountability, and bold vision. High performance government is not a luxury, it is the foundation of dignity, prosperity, and trust. And it is within our reach, it is within Africa's reach. So I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you from the Rwanda's perspective and wishing you fruitful discussions.
Want to check, do we have the deputy CEO online?
Hi, hello. I can hear you now.
Greetings, greetings. Thank you for joining us. Let me take this opportunity to invite Dr. Maja back as the moderator. We do have Dr. Felician online from the Rwanda Governance Board. I'm going to invite Dr. Philani Tembo as well, who's the Executive Director for the Institute for Global Dialogue. Mr. Ron Chari, Executive Director, Chandler Institute of Justice. We're going to have Dr. Frank Lekwaba in the afternoon, but he's got a commitment. He's from the Good School of Governance. So we're going to introduce him as well to come through. And yeah, we will have these conversations. Dr. Maja, over to you. We have time that has been scheduled. I'm sure you work out for the inputs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bunsami, and good morning again, colleagues. We're still in the morning. So we are going to have a panel discussion part one, which is focused on advancing high performance government in Africa. And we hope that the panel that we have with us will help us examine what it takes to build high performance government in Africa by investing in core public sector capabilities. So I'm going to invite our panelists to open up with some remarks. I will start with the Deputy CEO of the Rwanda Governance Board, just so that if we have any technical issues, everything seems to be nice now, so we must take full advantage of it. We start with you, sir. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. Sorry that I can intervene online. I would wish to be physically with you, but as the CEO RGB highlighted, I'm very, very happy, and Rwanda Governance Board in particular, to be a part of this ceremony of launching of Chandler Good Governance Institute Index 2025. this is a good opportunity for us because, as you know, Rwanda Governance Board also produce the same index, national index, Rwanda Governance Scorecard. And it comes on the right moment where we can also share some experience about assessing our governance aspect. And the idea came to highlight some more challenges and opportunity in the governance aspect for Rwanda. And the idea also comes for a long time where African countries continue being assessed by international indices, sometimes not having accurate data on our countries. And we decided to create our own index to show the real image and the opportunities, and based on our data, evidence-based research. That is why Rwanda Governance Scorecard, which is produced annually, based on 80 key pillars, have some similarity with Chandler Governance Index, or on some aspect, and we appreciate this kind of complementarity in assessing our countries in terms of good governance aspect. And for instance, I welcome really your idea of inviting RGB to be part of this ceremony and to share our experience and our contribution in terms of how we are assessing governance, particularly in our country. Over to you, moderator, and I will come back when you will ask me concrete questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mugi, much appreciated. Dr. Mtembu, when you do your opening, yesterday, Dr. Mtembu was with us in a different conversation on lessons from China, which he was moderating. Something struck me during this morning's presentation, and when you were sharing with us the founding Prime Minister of Singapore, and I was calculating the number of years that he was in power, and it gave me 30. The founding Prime Minister of Singapore was in power for 30 years, 30 years. And the conversation we were having in China yesterday was not in China, about China, was also around the whole meaning of democracy and the whole process of selection first before election. In China, they say it's selection before election. So, Dr. Mtembu, just help us understand what's happening there.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to the organizers for this invitation. I think, you know, what is important, sort of reflecting on the conversations we were having around, obviously, the role of China in this bigger picture. One thing I think we understood is that you can't, you know, you have to have ownership of the governance models that you choose as a country. Governance models have to be based on your context, your culture, your strengths. If you try to use systems, you know, that are not really suited to your own context, no matter how good they are in another country, they are likely to fail in your context. So, in as much as, you know, you may admire, let's say, the progress that countries like China have taken, you know, in the last few decades, the key lesson from those experiences, and we could add, you know, countries like Singapore, which of course we know when China was opening up, we know that Singapore was a very important sort of case study also, you know, for the Chinese leadership. So I think it's important to understand that the likelihood of succeeding is higher if your governance models are based on local experiences, your local history, but also the ability to galvanize society around a particular vision. Because yes, when we talk about democracy, of course, there are different systems of democracy. We just had an input from our colleagues, in Rwanda, mentioning what they view as, sort of home-driven solutions. And I had the privilege of working with some counterparts also in Rwanda a couple of years ago, where through the Rwanda Development Cooperation or Rwanda Cooperation Initiative. And it's quite clear that, yes, it's important to learn from others, but the lessons that you take from others have to work in a particular context, a context that may not necessarily be applicable, even in the countries that you have learned from. So it's important, sort of initiatives like this, the Good Governance Index, I think where they help us is this peer learning. They help us to actually take, and have an exchange about our respective experiences when it comes to government, what has worked well in these countries, what has not worked well in certain countries. But you take those lessons and you put them within a context that is quite unique. And I think that is quite important. That inspires ownership, which is very important. Because, you use the example of China. I can guarantee you, if the Chinese economy is not producing for its citizens, maybe China doesn't have an election in the next 5 years, the way that South Africa might have, or the way that other countries might have. But I can tell you that the Communist Party would lose legitimacy in China amongst society, and society would apply pressure on the Communist Party to deliver on its objectives. So the important things, going back, to the Chinese example and saying, and to Deng Xiaoping, when he says white cat, black cat, if it catches the mouse, it's a good cat. We can talk about all different types of governance models. We can talk about different regulatory frameworks. We can talk about all these different indicators. But do we have the requisite political will in those countries to actually improve the lives of citizens? And ultimately, that is what these governance systems will be judged by. So countries which are performing for their citizens will have a higher degree of legitimacy amongst their populations. Countries, no matter how good the laws that are not delivering to their citizens, the levels of trust towards governance institutions will decrease, and over time, social cohesion erodes. So good governance is absolutely fundamental, in this discussion, in getting us, to where we need to go.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Mtengu. Mr. Chabi, let's hear from you, please.
Thank you so much. So we are with the Chandler Institute of Justice, with the youngest sibling to Chandler Institute of Governance. We recently established base in Cape Town, but we also have been working quite a lot with African governments and also investing in government capabilities. I think, as our name probably gives away, the kind of areas that we focus on. We've been focusing more, I think, if you look at the Chandler Good Government Index, on the area that deals with robust policies and laws, where we're supporting African governments in undertaking quite comprehensive law reform related initiatives. We train government lawyers, we also provide consulting services, and also doing quite a lot of research and knowledge work to support and then just build the capabilities within government. But I think for us, we view law reform as an often forgotten, I think, lever or catalyst to national development and national prosperity. Because I think when you look at it, be talking about governance issues, we talk about economic activity issues, we can also talk about social issues or helping people rise. I think countries that have also done well, I think at the beginning of that process was well thought out policies and well structured legislation and laws that help them deliver. I think we're talking about Singapore as an example, where if you see they've done quite a lot, I think, in just being a transparency, building cultures of integrity within government, and the anti-corruption legislation regime, I think helps them rank highly in corruption perception on a lot of global indexes. We can also talk about financial markets or places where economic activity thrives. Be it there's a reason why there's more capital that flows through London in New York, particularly I think because of the bedrock of their foundational communities. There's good policies and laws in the sense of financial markets that makes it easy for individuals to invest their money or put their money in savings, and then also financial institutions to also protect kind of some of the consumer needs. The same is also for social issues and helping people rise, be it education, healthcare, housing. We believe, I think, there's a role that law reform can also play to catalyze or fast track that particular initiative. Our work has been entirely demand driven. We've been operational for just over a year. We've been doing quite a lot of work in the continent. I think we've just started doing in South Africa, working with government departments, that more training lawyers on how to write clear and well-structured legislation. I think we could all testify, including some of us who are lawyers, that the way law is written in the statutes, it's very difficult to understand even for lawyers or judges whose job is to interpret the law. So just trying to figure out, is it how can we utilize the law as a tool that is used by common people on an everyday basis, that you don't need someone else to interpret what the law is saying. And it's also a way of communicating some complex government policies into legislation. So we've been running training programs across the continent, in Zambia, in Malawi, and also starting in Rwanda recently, soon enough. But on how do we train that just building a kind of government expertise on how to write clear and efficient and robust legislation. So that's mostly some of the training that we've been doing. We've also been working with governments in helping them develop policies that get translated into legislation. So our work cuts across different sectors of the economy, from mining, where I think most of our countries are commodity driven. We have a new, I think, kind of dynamic that's playing all the natural resource mining space, where there are these so-called critical minerals, which I think are quite critical. When you look at it, I think even the term critical is more coined from a more OECD kind of perspective, where it's critical to their supply chain. But from an African perspective, they could be critical to us for different reasons. It could be job creation, foreign currency, could be critical because there's an opportunity to develop communities. So we've also been working with some governments in helping them craft and design policies on how they can actually leverage on this global demand for these minerals. Also targeting some areas that I think where the law aspect of it has been forgotten. One area that I think most of the demand is coming from is how can we facilitate private sector investment in energy generation? I think most of our countries have energy security issues, load shedding, grid collapsing, all sorts of things. But I think for us to scale up our development efforts, and I think there's a need for us to bring in private sector investment. But a lot of that is in our legal systems. Most of them very outdated, dating back to colonial times, and I think they don't serve our present and future needs. So we see quite a lot of I think need in investing in government capabilities. And then we've been working, I think, directly with government and with other development partners and think tanks working on this space. But happy to share more on some of the case studies as we get deeper into the conversation.
Thank you. So Dr. Frank Lekaba was going to be part of our panel list for part 2, but the conversation is the same and he has the pleasure of time. So we thought that we can include him in this conversation so that we don't lose on his observations. Go ahead, Dr.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maja, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Is it morning? Yes, still morning. Yes. I want to reflect on 2 key issues that are arising from the report, Dinesh. And as an academic, I believe what Prof. Nyamsho said, that no civilization has reached its own completeness without borrowing from the other civilizations. So as we think of high performance of government in Africa, of course, what Dr. Mthembu says, we need to appreciate our local context and learn what's happening in the other sections of the world. And of course, this report helps us to do that reflection. And I'm talking of reflection because I'm from the university. That's where we do a lot of reflection, problematization. We don't agree fully with the report. When you read it against this, it gives us a better reflection, but when you read it against this, it does not give us a better reflection. So for the past 2 years, I've been playing into the space of the International Political Science Association, where the major talk has been about the democratic decline. And this democratic decline comes from other indexes. The Economist Intelligence Report, the Democracy Index, the VDEM, which they are almost the same, and then the Mo Ibrahim Foundation report, and and the Afrobarometer report. So we've been trying to understand democracy in the context of what these reports are telling us, and why is the continent. And reports are telling us that half of the African continent, the people there are in the authoritarian regimes. So what is the quality? So now this is where your report comes in. It adds a dimension as to what is the quality of governance in these authoritarian regimes. And I just glanced on the last report the EIU released, and it was titled, "What's wrong with the representative democracy?" And 3 reasons account for this. One, the declining trust in government. This is when now you are telling us where are the fault lines. So the democracy index report will say there's a decline in the trust of government, but it doesn't tell us how and all of that. And I'm happy the CGGI gives us those indicators: leadership, foresight, strong institutions, and all of that. The other point they raise is the failure of politicians and political parties to represent voters effectively. The point Dr. Mthembu says, even in China, it may be an authoritarian regime according to the Western notions of democracy, but the point is saying that there will be a rebellion from below. People will not be satisfied. Doesn't mean when it's an authoritarian regime, people are going to rest. They are just on an opium and all of that. And then the third one is the civic and representation deficit. So these are very important points that I'm reading this report and juxtaposing them with these other reports to kind of give us a big picture of what are the key issues and all of that. And I argue that we cannot talk or research these issues without, the issues that these other indexes are raising, without talking about the leadership, foresight, strong institutions, and all of that. And bringing it here at home, just 2 weeks back or 3 weeks back, there was a big discussion on the national dialogue. The content of the national dialogue has not been a major contestation. In fact, if you ask someone, what is the agenda of the national dialogue? We can even do a little survey here and say, what was the content of the national dialogue? It will collapse this room into sections of talking points. But the point that I observed building up to that national dialogue was Should it be state-driven or should it be citizen-led national dialogue? And what does this mean? The foundations say they have their own perspectives, the foundations. And then the Democratic Alliance has got also its own perspectives and all of that. But the point was the leadership deficit. For me, the contestations around the national dialogue were more about, they reflect much more to us about the leadership deficit or leadership trust. The trust that people have in the current, not in the current leadership, but in the political leadership we have, as to solve the issues. And I'm not going to say what former Minister Pablo said on the other day on Sunday, talking about, can you ask these questions when you are in the government and all of that? What does it tell us about you and your leadership capability? So I'm happy that leadership foresight and oversight, leadership and foresight is one of the key variables. It helps us to then be able to contextualize these issues. And it's not unique to us, the questions of national dialogue. I'm much more interested in African politics. Here in our neighbors, Eswatini, there's a big debate now as to how the national dialogue, the content of the national dialogue should be. The king says, let it be Sibaya. Sibaya is like the council. It's a traditional forms of engagement. But civil society says that form is related to the power that we are challenging already. The power of the chief, the power of the king, that we are challenging as a society. The arrangement you're asking us to come and have this national dialogue on has already, if we go through the structure, you're already empowered in so many ways to veto whatever the issue that may be there. And also, I remember the SOT has been going through serious reforms discussions and the contestations around the national dialogue, how it should be. So it's not unique to us. So some of these issues are, you can see them across the continent. The last point that Maja, I want to raise is the issue of strong institutions. But before I get to the strong institutions, I want to say, so leadership, we have to think about it horizontal and vertical. It doesn't have to think of leadership at the national level, and we don't think about it across levels of the state. And it doesn't have to think of leadership at the state, and we don't think of public institutions, civil society, universities, and all of that. It doesn't have. It must be judged horizontally and vertically. It's one of the points I want to make here. And then the issue of strong institutions is a big point here. The report, the CGGI report, notes that Africa's region score on strong institutions has improved. While there is a decline in financial stewardship, rural influence and repetition in helping people run, I find this a paradox. How do you have institutions that are strong, which must serve the public, yet the other indicators are on decline? So the point I wanted to say is, also as we reflect of these institutions, we need to think of, we need to disaggregate them as, for example, here at home, you look at Auditor General's report if you want to make a sense of financial stewardship. And the report of 2023-2024 of the Auditor General indicates that at the national and provincial level, you have 142 unqualified reports, meaning clean reports, and 168 unqualified findings. 168 out of 115 entities that are judged. Looks, the picture is good, right? At the national level, that's something like 300 entities that are doing well. But look at it at the local level. At the local level, the report shows us there's about 16% of municipalities that got unqualified with no findings out of 257. So it's 41 of 247 with good clean reports. And then 99 municipalities out of these 259 with findings. Clean with findings. And then these are almost equal. Then you have got 90 municipalities with qualified reports, meaning there's problems of governance, financial stewardship in the municipality. 90. This is almost almost equal to the other half in terms of clean governance. So when you look at the picture at the national and you look at the picture at the local, you can see the disjuncture. So same with leadership. The leadership you find at the national and the leadership you find in our municipalities is problematic. That picture is a very clear picture. So to conclude in that Maja, I've got about 2, 3, 4 points that I wanted to reflect on, to say we must reflect on. One of the things I observed is that the Nordic countries, Denmark, Finland, Norway, Sweden, in this report, are the top winners. They are in the top 5. Very impressive. And you look at other reports, you find the very same countries doing well in democracy index, peace index, all these indexes. What is it that these guys are doing that we can learn from? Not to say replicate, but we can learn from as a nation. We need a serious discussion on the political party and leadership, the quality of political parties and the leadership we have in our country. Honestly, and across all levels. So for us to have a better discussion about government, we need to also now have a serious discussion about the party and the leadership. What qualifications does one, if I want to be a mayor tomorrow, what qualifications do I need to acquire? What merits, what benchmarks should I meet, minimum requirements to meet to be a mayor? If the bar is on the ground, then you know what's likely to happen. It's not lower, but the ground. So we need to really think about it. Real politics cannot be a qualification of leadership. It can't be. And then the quality of governance, of course, I spoke about this, that it needs to be examined at all levels. African problems are contextual and have varied sources. Thus, analysis and solutions cannot be generalized. Even the AU, now they have a big problem with the Alliance of the Sahel. You have been generalizing solutions to the coups and all of that. Now Mali, Burkina Faso say, our coup is a decolonial coup. And if you oppose our coup, then you are advancing colonization. Now the AU is finding itself in a very compromised position in the ECOWAS. So African problems cannot be made to be said that these are African problems, they are like that. They are contextual, they are varied, and all of that. And this report helps us to dissect them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we are going to open it up for a conversation so that you as the audience can be part of the process. Just to make a few points which could give us a sense of where we are now and how we move forward. What is clear from the panelists so far is that we have to not be simplistic. We have to find a way of not being simplistic. So one of the things that we will pass immediately so that we don't dwell on the simple issues is that we will pass on the conversation of democratic states succeed or fail vis-a-vis autocratic states succeed or fail. So we've agreed that that's too simplistic. So we'll close that. We're not going to talk about it. Now, the second thing that is coming up in different ways from the panelists is this thing of capability, right? Now, you know, many of us, English is not our first language. So in South Africa, sometimes we confuse this concept of capability with the concept of capacity. You know, South Africans think when they say capacity, they mean capability. And I think, I mean, English has now fortunately taught me that those are completely two different concepts. Capacity is easy. It's simplistic. So we are not going to talk about capacity. So now here's the issue about capability, which I would like the panelists to reflect on as we open up the conversation online and also with the colleagues that are here. Amartya Sen talks a lot about this concept of capability. And he argues that you cannot be free until and unless you are capable. So he links this concept of capability to freedom, not democracy, which he argues is a completely different story. And I think this is relevant for this launch that is focusing on the region, the African continent, because this is the one continent that has been colonized the most. And this is the one continent where we talk a lot about freedom, even in this country. Yet we never link that concept to capability. So my question is, what does that mean? What does it mean to be capable? What does it require to be capable? What are the things that we must do to be capable? How can we be able to demonstrate when we have reached an acceptable level of capability across the board? Because as this report shows us under helping people rise, unless you deal with that index that deals with helping people rise, which is about capability, everything else falls apart. So I'd like us to find a way of zooming in on that conversation. So we will, I think we will start in the room, and then we will go to the online questions. I don't know how I'm going to see the online questions. Will we project them on the screen? And then we can see them and be able to respond. Let's start with the room, maybe with a show of hands. We have microphones on both sides. You just raise your hand and then I will guide you to the microphone. You've got, maybe let's have a first take. If I can take 3 or 4 hands, you will be the first, you will be the second, you will be the third. So we have those 3 hands. Thank you very much. In that order, I think you got, okay, we are not doing it political styles. In politics, you go to the mic, but here the mic is coming to you.
Thank you very much. Very good morning to everyone. My name is Usumas Noso. I'm from the Public Service Commission. I was actually fascinated by the points that were made by Dr. Felician, especially around the indicators that they've adopted as government. But it therefore begs the question, if Africa was to come about having a meaningful transformation, both politically and economically, the success indicators must go beyond the GDP, which I think we all concur with this perspective. In other words, there ought to be concrete, measurable, inclusive, and a deliberate slant towards those that we consider to be marginalized, which is the young people. Now, you've alluded to the national dialogue. I don't want to delve into the methods. It became a different kind of engagement. But the next question is, and it is based on the adage that says that nothing for us without us. How do you put all those into context in making sure that everyone is taken on board and it can lead to a greater transformation, both economically and politically, without necessarily blurring the lines, and making sure that the capability that Dr. Maja was referring to and is actually taken on board in terms of the leadership, both in politics and in the economic realm. Thank you.
Good morning to the House. My name is Mpelelo Makwetu Tlagekile. I am the Director of Snowdrop Business Improvement Consultants. For me, it's not a question, but it's a reflection. And just want to voice out my insights. It was actually very interesting to find out that South Africa ranks high, among the highest on policy and law, and yet it ranks among the lowest on helping people rise. For me, that's a very big red flag. And I have worked with many stakeholders, and one of the things I have observed is that there is a lack of capability for execution. So whatever is on a big plan, it can't be distilled down to meaningful actions. And so I believe that the disjuncture between being strong on policy and law and yet failing to deliver is a question of execution. But not only that, execution always comes together with performance, measuring, and monitoring. And if those two pillars are not there, it actually doesn't matter how beautiful our documents are. If we cannot make them alive, like for example, South Africa has a very good constitution, but people are living in abject poverty. And we don't seem to be able to make sense of what is actually happening. And it is exactly on the premise of capability. There is a shortage of people that can execute, and that is a fact. You will see in any annual performance plan of any parastatal, they are beautiful. They talk of big things, and yet the results are just not there. They are just not there. So I would like my observation is that execution and performance management. And then the other thing I would like to comment on Dr. Mthembu's statement. Dr. Mthembu mentioned something about learning and then bringing the learning in context for us. There are many tricks that get taken for people to go and learn what happens in these performing countries. And what they come back with usually doesn't work for us. And I believe the reason is because the learning did not happen in the sense that it was not contextualized. So basically we copy and we are failing to do what we call benchmarking, which is more of a study. Because when you learn of what works elsewhere, then the responsibility is to find out, depending on your context and culture and everything else about your people, how does this thing translate? So because there is no success in the learning, and then the learning becomes useless, even though there is a lot of money that has been spent to go and acquire that learning. And then for Dr. Likaba, am I correct? Yes. Thank you also for your insights. The problem, you say that we are performing very well at national level, according to the AG report, but the problem is actually at local level. And you can actually tell from the disjunction that it means that at national level, although they have grand plans, those plans are not cascaded properly to the local level. And it also talks to the lack of measuring performance correctly. Because if national can perform better, there is no reason why the local cannot perform better because local is serving national. But you can tell that there is an inadequate cascading of the goals or objectives of national to local. And also it means that national is struggling to actually measure the performance of local so that they can be in sync. I'll end it. Thank you.
Well, thank you and good morning, colleagues. I'm Maja from the National School of Government. I think for the state to be capable, first of all, like starting from yesterday, we should start off by, embracing the complexities, understand the environment, the political environment. I think is the first step that we should do. And then also coming to the reflections, like I can go back to South Africa, like when we started in 1994 and way back. And until now, South Africa has got good policies. And then, but then we are still facing this money, when coming to other issues. I think, as other speakers have already alluded that yes, we've got good policies and everything, but then the reflections, we are still in denial because we are unable as a state to sit back and think, where did we drop the ball? Because, like, for example, coming to the global meltdown that happened between 2008 and 2010, South Africa was one of the countries which managed to come out of that global meltdown way ahead of America and other developed countries. Reason why is because we always had good policies. But then the question that remains is, where did we drop the ball? Because in as much as you can learn from other countries, developed countries, or other, African countries, but out of the lessons that we learned, what is it that you are doing? Because you should reflect and then come up with lasting solutions, because talking and not acting, obviously we are not going to be able to come up with a capable state. I think we should reflect in as much as we want, but then come up with clear policies and program of action, to correct what went wrong, and then also to improve on what we actually have now. I think that's the main point that I want to make.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's check online if we can project some of the issues that our online colleagues are raising. Just enlarge it for us if we can have a look.
That's Maja.
So, how actionable are these indicators in South Africa? Let me see whether I'll see when I'm there. I still actually it's worse when I do. No, I can't see those.
Yeah.
You can enlarge them a bit.
No, let me see.
Yeah, because the screen is
yeah,
it's getting worse. Okay. So if you can read them out for us, maybe. Yeah. Oh, we have that. Thank you. Now there, I think we should proceed with this, guys. Thank you. So we have a question from Sadiq. What are the major enablers for these indicators mentioned in the index and the key challenges? That's the first question to our panelists. The second one, how does your formula work, given that many index calculations are a combination of both qualitative and quantitative indicators? So that's a methodological question. I think you can take it up here for us to do that. Temba is checking how actionable are these indicators in South Africa in terms of specifics, i.e. industry specifics, because tourism or international visitor perception may rank high, whereas domestic tourism and participation is poor. So, okay, so there's that one. Those are the only ones that I have. But Sadiq looks like yeah, there's another one from Temba. One of the drawbacks of government's government index calculation in Africa is the lack of inclusion of municipalities for local government effectiveness. We were having that conversation actually during tea as to how this can help us at provincial and local government. It was an issue that the chair, you raised, the commissioner from the Public Service Commission. Policies often are measured by looking at national issues and institutions that provide a politically biased outlook rather than its citizens. That's Toilet Helber. What is the panel's view on the proposition that democracy is a consequence of a society's civilization? So back to that issue that we said we will avoid, but the people are the people. China has a blueprint of their civilization, but I'm here, I think he wants to say, but I hear little of African civilization discussions juxtaposed with development. So my question is, where are we in Africa, i.e. South Africa, in this regard? I think those are the questions for our panelists. Thank you very much. Thank you, Wilson. Much appreciated. So, Dr. Usekumuki, let's start with you.
Yes, I am. I can hear you now.
Did you hear everything that I was saying?
Yes, I hear. Do you want me to start with addressing some of questions?
Yes, you can start.
Yeah. Thank you very much, moderator, and I think also participant who raised these interesting questions. And I try to address some of them in the context of Rwanda. And then after I can talk about how we can see some raised question in perspective of the whole Africa. For example, when we are measuring governance in our context, I like someone who intervenes saying that indicators should go beyond the GDP. And I say that in our context, the most important is to address socio-economic transformation of our citizens. By doing so, of course, with the quantitative indicators are useful because, as you know, in the UN system, the quantifiable data are also very important. But we believe that in addition to quantitative, we need qualitative ones. Because when you assess, for example, Human Development Index from UNDP, they put more emphasis on quality, on qualitative issues. Meaning that when we talk of economic development, is a little bit different from economic growth. Economic growth is about quantitative indicators like GDP, as you said. But when it comes to economic development, we are emphasizing on quality, on quality of life, meaning that style of life, education, health, those are indicators of qualitative indicators we are measuring in our system, meaning that we should not be satisfied with having economic growth when it's not well distributed in our society. That is why we introduce also another indicators related to those who are familiar with economy, with what we call a Gini coefficient, which is measuring income distribution. It's very critical for us because we need to make sure that we can enjoy economic growth, but not necessarily having economic development. It's where we introduce this kind of inequality issues to assess that all citizens are enjoying this kind of economic development. This is one aspect of measuring economy, and human security issues is very critical for us. And in Africa, we need a kind of result because we talk a lot about democracy, we talk about human rights and so forth, but what we need is really addressing results. We need results rather than continuing assisted by international organizations, blaming Africa by lacking of capacity of governing our resources and natural resources and human resources. Yet all we need to do so. We go to the same school and university with Europeans or Americans. Once graduated, when they come back to our continent, to our countries, what is missing? Why Europe, Asia, or America can perform well in all these aspects, yet in Africa we continue lacking a capacity of managing our own business. And we are running out of and continuing begging for technical assistance from outside. And this is really a shame for us, and time has come to take our responsibility in terms of our managing our society. This is what I can add to the first question. And again, for the issue related to execution, because I know that we are very good in formulating good policies and strategies. The challenge is how we are implementing them. You know, we have Africa Agenda 63. We have a vision. Every country in Africa have a vision, long-term program. But the challenge is how are we implementing all those good programs? And for me, time has come to really to go out formulating policies or strategies. Time it come just to address really to implement what we are saying. I think it's a way, it's another way of doing business. Because, for example, in Rwanda, we have Vision of 2050, which highlighted some more key ambitious target of becoming high income country by 2050. By doing so, it's a very ambitious target, but what we do is to create midterm strategies, 5-year program to see what we can achieve every 5 years towards achieving long-term program of 2050. And again, here comes issue of performance contract, meaning that all these fixed target supposed to be achieved in a fixed agenda or term. Each and every institution is supposed to address or to meet a specific mission or responsibility assigned to them. And then we do evaluation every year through what we call the performance contract or our homegrown solution in Mihigo, whereby all every institution are being held accountable in terms of achieving our long-term agenda. And the issue related to inclusiveness, because when we establish these indexes or indicators, we have to make sure that no one is being left behind in terms of inclusivity, specifically in municipality, in local government. That is why, for example, in Rwanda, we introduce, in addition to our index, we create another one based on quantitative data collection, based on perception surveys of our citizens, specifically on governance and service delivery. Annually, we assess the perception of our citizens, and we go to all our district, collecting data from our citizens, consulting them where they wanted to make our government should put more effort. And this kind of consultation help us to make sure that we are inclusive enough in terms of making sure that our citizens are being part of our assessment of our study, not just sitting in the office and producing a report. This kind of inclusiveness, this kind of engaging our partners is very critical for us. And when it comes to democracy and civilization, sometimes we have some more confusion when it comes how we can define democracy, because in Africa we have temptation of being of adopting the style of democracy, what we call the Europeans is democracy. Okay, we know that there is no single definition of democracy because we will believe that democracy can be defined when it comes to addressing human security issues or socio-economic development of our citizens. Otherwise, when we continue analyzing democracy in the style of Western countries, sometimes we are missing the major point. I agree that some more indicators can be similar to all continents, but here we need to incorporate or introduce our uniqueness, our specificities, because the system in South Africa can differ from a system in Senegal or elsewhere in Africa, although we have some similarities, but each and every country has some uniqueness which is supposed to be considered in our assessment. For example, Rwanda, as a country post-genocide, the system we are managing the governance in Rwanda, for sure it can be different from other countries which never have this kind of atrocity in history. That is why for us it's very critical to address some specificities, some uniqueness of each and every country, although we know that there is some more similarities in terms of assessing or addressing democracy. Over to you, moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ntemo?
Colleagues, certainly I think at this stage, I think there's really growing, consensus of the limitations of GDP as a measure. It has its uses here and there, but I think generally speaking, there's a growing consensus, and it's been growing for some time when it comes to how we measure human societies, human progress, and so forth. And I think, it was a professor while working here in South Africa, Professor Pierre Monti, who coined the term GDP as the gross domestic product. Basically understanding that, yes, statistics are important, but, at times they hide more than they actually, reveal. And so that is quite important. Anything essentially. And we must also understand that the measurement itself is also closely associated with not necessarily about how to measure human progress. It was really about also conflict, about war, about how we actually, how the nation is producing, towards that. So I think even the foundations of the measurement are quite important. So we are moving beyond that. There's been great innovations throughout the world, how you measure human progress, including, the UN playing a key role in terms of even ideas like human security, as our colleague has just mentioned in Rwanda. Now, certainly, when it comes to, the question you posed around capabilities, I think this is really why I think it's really, to me, it's simple. It's the ability to do something. It's like in its simplest form. We have all these draft documents, we have all these policy documents, we have all these, regulations, but what are we trying to achieve? We know as South Africa, we know the history. We know the huge inequalities that we have. We know the legacies of colonialism and apartheid. What are we trying to achieve as a society? And what are we willing to invest in actually ensuring that all the collection of our institutions, the individuals, the role of the state, the private sector, and others, what are we trying to achieve? Can we invest in the areas we need to invest in order to be able to move the country from A to B, and then from B to C? So for me, if we think about capabilities, as simply as the ability to do something, and and where we see weaknesses, what do we need to invest in order to get us there? Then I think we would be making inroads. And of course, we applied this within a complex environment. The role of the political environment certainly plays a key role. I think, that somebody mentioned all these trips that, people undertake. They go to China, they learn certain things, they go to Singapore, they learn, but are they learning? I think that's the question. I think, clearly, if you're undertaking, annual trips, or at least once every 2 years, to a particular country, and you're not even necessarily producing comprehensive reports or summarized reports that actually tell you what it is that you learned and how applicable it is in our context, then we do need to question, yes, are you actually learning, or sort of just being amazed by being taken into a factory, and it's like, wow, this is amazing, great technology and all of that. But, so the ability to absorb also, and then to apply is actually quite important. So it's also key then, who are we sending on these trips? Do they actually have the ability to learn, and to come back and share those experiences with a broader society and other policymakers? And then I think just generally that performance management is absolutely essential, because I think at times, we sort of shifting goalposts. We say we want to achieve this, and then, we forget about the deadline that we had set, and then suddenly you have a new policy document, and you're sort of moving from one, to the next, and you sort of ask yourself, what are we actually trying to achieve? Do we actually have a national vision that is actually, yes, maybe over 5 years, over 10 years, longer term even, but then that's broken down into smaller pieces, where each and every also department, institution understands how they feed into those broader objectives. This is absolutely critical. And the last point, I think it is important to understand that as we talk about civilizations, as we look at, let's say, China as a civilizational state, what we are trying to do on the African continent, sometimes I think we at times think it's never been done before. I think sometimes I think we oversimplify our history in a sense that we let the last 400 years define, who we are. In the broader scheme of things, 400 years is nothing. 500 years is nothing. We have civilizations that have, and we still have the certain concepts that have been carried over and have not been destroyed by the colonial period. So as we think about the things that we're trying to do to build healthy societies, prosperity, we need to understand that we've done it before. When we look at these good governance indicators, and we see that Africa is at the bottom, there are periods in history where if governance indicators had been done, where actually African civilizations would be on top of the, of the table. And we don't have to look far. I mean, in each region on the continent, we do have historical examples where African civilizations have been at the helm and have led, when it comes to science, innovation, and so on and so forth. So I think it's important to remind ourselves that it's not that the countries in Northern Europe or Southeast Asia, that they somehow are born with certain innate abilities that others do not have. I think these things are doable. They are not new. And we just have to remind ourselves, of that from time to time.
So before I bring in Mr. Chari, I just want to add something interesting to the point Dr. Tenbu was making about trips. You know, it's a very interesting phenomenon. I wish somebody could study it and write about it internationally. You know, let me say South Africa. In South Africa, we think 30-year-olds are young. We think when somebody is 30 years old, they are young. If you look at the rest, especially in Singapore, 30-year-olds are CEOs in Singapore. And why is that? And you look at these trips, 99% of the money we spend in South Africa on trips are for old people. 30 plus, there's very little learning. You were being polite the way you put it, you know? There's, all they can see is mountains and rivers. So, however, and this is an interesting thing that I've observed internationally. If you look at the most successful countries and the money they spend sending the real young, 18, 19, 20, the money those countries spend sending those age groups of young people where there is learning. If you look at the percentage of Singaporeans, South Koreans, Chinese, in the US, in the UK, who are funded by the government at 18 years old, with a proviso that when you get that degree at 23, 24, you come back home to deal with this issue of capability. So I think it's something we've not looked at as South Africans, and we are just rolling with vibes and we think we'll get there. Mr. Chari?
So much. Probably missed some of the questions. I think they're not directly directed. I'll try to address them more broadly or generally. But I think touching back on the issue of capabilities, I think my understanding that I think we could probably define or look at capabilities as the kind of ingredients that are required for government to function efficiently, so that it transforms maybe aspirations and policies into actual services for the citizen. And I'll cluster them maybe into three broad areas. So first one, I think, is people. We need to invest in our people, whether it's government employees, and I think there's a talk whether political influence or political cycles, but I think what we've seen in the space that we work in, we focus more on the technocrats, the guys who are in government or the lawyer in government who's tasked to come up with a quite transformational piece of legislation and does not have the means or the expertise or the training to actually deliver and do their job properly. Not just focus on government institutions, but how can government also ensure that they have a healthy pipeline of talent? Like what kind of education systems do we need to build from primary, secondary to tertiary education? What skills do we really need? Are we talking about we're getting into a digital age now where probably most of us use AI in our daily lives? How can we also leverage on technology? And how can we equip people with the right skills for technology? Secondly, we talk about processes and systems. How can we design systems and processes that also make sure that we deliver efficiently, costly, cost efficiently, and then within reasonable time? We're doing work, I mentioned, I think, in the justice and legal sectors, where some of the work we're doing in the judiciaries. So you'll be so surprised how much backlog our court systems have. There's millions and millions of cases. Some of them go beyond 20 years. And I think it's not serving any people. It's a burden on the courts and the lawyers who appear before the judges. So our court systems are still so manual that when lawyers are arguing before a judge, there's someone who's transcribing with a pen and a paper, including the judge himself is taking their own notes of the pen and paper. And at some point after that, there has to be transcribed into sometimes used to typewriters and sometimes laptops. But that whole process can take months and months. But we've been trying to come up with different solutions, working right now with the judiciary in Zambia on how can we use AI in the court administration system. So simple things as transcribing, like voice generated transcription where you can listen to it and then transcribe it into a written, or even the filing of arguments and even how can we use technology. So that's some of the work that we've been doing. But I think just on processes and systems, I think there's needs to be more effort in trying to design systems that cost less money, deliver on time, and can also utilizing data technology. How can we constantly learn? How can we benchmark ourselves, including planning purposes where we're trying to maybe deploy resources, again, using a court system. There are probably hundreds of courts systems from magistrates, high court, in court, constitutional court. Using data and platforms, you could probably say there's probably a challenge in a court in this particular district. And you can even now, using that diagnosis, you can probably go there and further analyze that more informed by data. And I think lastly, I think in terms of the capabilities, we'll talk about systems and institutions as well. How can we deliver institutions where we hire the right talent and everything is kind of based on merit-based? So how do we make sure that the right people and the best talent that we have end up in the best roles, whether it's in government or private, particularly because we're talking about government capabilities? How can we make sure that we develop merit-based systems that enable us to hire the right talent and the right people that can deliver? Because you might have one person who's really smart and capable of doing what they're supposed to do, and another person probably affiliated to some political movement or party or some nepotism. Already, I think we're shortchanging ourselves by making the wrong people do the jobs that we're supposed to. And then lastly is just the laws. How can we make sure that the laws that we have and the rules that we have are quite clear, easy to understand, easy to enforce, and that everyone can actually utilize the law in their day-to-day without resorting to lawyers, court disputes. If you look at most of the disputes that the courts are dealing with at the moment, be it labor, commercial, family, personal matters, at the core of it is a badly drafted law, which I think to kind of solve simple things, it could be a maintenance issue in court. But because the maintenance laws that we continue to use are so badly drafted that people end up spending millions and millions of dollars trying to resume dispute that I think could have been easily avoided if, as part of our capabilities or investment capabilities, we also make sure that we have just clear laws that each and every one of us should understand.
Thank you very much. Dr. Naidu, you want to add 1 or 2 points before we close this part?
Thanks, Dr. Maja. It's actually Mr. Naidu, but thank you for the promotion. No, just on the question about methodology, I won't belabor the point, but to mention that the methodology is fully available at the back of the index. I think the person asking the question didn't specify which indicator they were interested in, but it's all in there. And we're very transparent about this, but if there are questions, do reach out to us.
Thank you very much. I think we must give our panel a round of applause. We are going to excuse our panelists from part 1. Before you leave, I'm going to invite my colleague to come up and say a proper thank you. We will not be able to do it virtually. We might just post it to you, Deputy CEO, so that you'll get, you can see. I can now we are sidelining you for now. So we will close up with the 2 colleagues. Thank you very much. You are excused. And we will now begin with the last team. Okay? Well, depends.
Next to the right.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, I'm going to now invite our part two panelists to join our colleague here, Dr. Legaba. If we can be joined by Ms. Bakari, please join us, and also Mr. Muni, if you could kindly join us. The idea is to continue with the conversation. I'm going to give Ms. Bakari an opportunity to give us her inputs. She's been with us from the beginning. She's fully conversant of the discussion that's been taking place. So we are now moving another gear, and also Mr. Munu, and then we'll have a conversation. The hope, colleagues, is that we could conclude the entire panel discussion around 1 o'clock, and then when we break for lunch, we'll be done for the day. Ms. Bakari, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Sakina Mwenyemkuu from the Prime Minister's Office in Tanzania. I work as the Director for Government Performance Monitoring and Evaluation in the ministry. I would like to thank you very much, Chandler Institute of Governance, but also National School of Government for, of course, for initiating this forum. Actually, it's one of the very important forum for discussion, and I'm so happy that now Africa, the program has been launched now in Africa, and it's just getting to a very, it is timely to us. So it's a good forum to share experiences, to share learnings from our own settings, and also to gain momentum to be like the Nordic countries and other countries that are performing better. Actually, coming to this discussion, I was following since morning, we talk on how we can improve our government, having high government performance, but also using, of course, improving through capability approaches, which is very key when it comes to improving our government. And I was trying to reflect on how we do business back home in Tanzania, especially the focus of helping people to raise. Actually, this is the really business the government is supposed to focus on, because whatever we are doing in the government is to ensure we empower our citizens, we make sure they get the best from all the policies that are developed. Because developing the policies, plans, and programs themselves doesn't matter. What it matters for us is in the services, actually the results, the outcome that are coming from those policies. So the focus in Tanzania now is to improve our M&E systems to ensure we get the best data that can inform on decision making in the top, because we have come to realize that most of the initiatives are very good at the top, because we have launched our Vision 2050 previous month. So there is a lot of promises and there is a lot of inspiration in the vision. But the challenge now is we want to make sure all those aspirations are coming to the real life of our people. But we cannot do it only by focusing at the top. That's why we are now going down to the citizen, to the local government, to empower the local government in terms of skills, in terms of their structures, to make sure whatever has been planned from the vision to long-term perspective plans, to national 5-year development plans, are coming to the reality to our people. So there is a lot of restructuring that are going on, but also the systems that are developed to facilitate the execution of these planning tools. So I had the Department for Government Performance Monitoring and Evaluation, which is the new department. Previously we used to have a monitoring and evaluation only done under the planning department, but it was not coming out of the really monitoring the execution of the plans by having the MONE units. So the government has just made a decision to have fully fledged MONE units, which were with staffing, but also the staff are now capacitated to make sure all plans are monitored and evaluated. So up to this moment, all local government authorities have got MONE units, which are reporting direct to the executive director of the local authority, because previously there was no such structures. And also when you go to the ministries, all ministries now have got MONE units. So we think by empowering those MONE units and local government, it will be easier to ensure all our plans, from the vision to national development plans to strategic plans, will be implemented, but also the results will be seen, because the routine monitoring, but also evaluation of the programs will inform on areas that need to be maybe paying more attention for improving our government systems. But also we have done a lot of reforms, especially on legal sector. Currently in Tanzania, I think we are doing very good in improving our legal sector, especially on magistrate, judicial, the entire judicial system. Now the citizen can even initiate a case using the gadgets at the local government level. And we have reduced the number of backlog cases. Currently, we don't have those, the cases that have been not handled, because through the system, people can make a follow-up of their case proceeding. They can even print out and see what is going on. They can even follow up on the decisions made by the magistrate. So there is a huge transformation in the legal sector. Actually, even the whistleblowers approaches also is really doing good. People, they can now send the anonymous claims, anonymous just reporting if there is anything that is not happening at the ground, sent to the authority, and automatically they get the response on how it has been handled. And now we have the e-mediation system. Mediation is language, which means a feedback mechanism system, whereby the citizen, they use it to send if they have anything it was not handled at the set. So there is a lot that are going, of course, improving the governance by improving the e-government in general, because we have got also the National E-Government Authority, which is on top of all these initiatives. Let me end up here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stefan.
Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me to share our experience in Zambia. So my experience is really on the service delivery side. At the end of the day, the role of the state, the role of government is to provide public goods and services. So the last mile to good governance is to ensure that the public accesses the goods and services they need in order for their lives to be better off. So when you look at the Chandler Good Government Index pillar, helping people rise, really that is what we should be focusing. And I was glad to hear that the
if you're going to change your rankings, you must ensure that your interventions are around helping people rise, because ultimately that's what you deliver on, the last mile to service delivery. So where I work, the National Health Insurance Scheme, it's a scheme established by the state to enhance financing in access to healthcare services for the people, to reduce challenges that people have when they access healthcare services. Now, obviously, for such to happen, there has to be very clear leadership and foresight. What do we want to achieve for our people? There is a big dialogue and debate around what we call universal health coverage, where people should access healthcare services without suffering any form of financial hardship, and therefore increase their access and reduce inequality in access to services. But for that to happen, there have to be clear, proper, defined institutions and governance rules. Now, institutions on their own, no matter how strong they are, cannot deliver. They deliver through people. And the people must have capabilities to channel a vision through the institution, targeting the ultimate objectives, which is the provision of public health services. So, in our perspective, the focus is on implementation. It's great to have the well-written policies and documents and have very lovely launches, but that will not deliver if you don't focus on implementation. So how do you translate from policy to practice to actual outputs which people desire? And that is where the issue of capabilities come in, the state capabilities. And the state capabilities, in our perspective, is a function of the people entrusted with running the state, the politicians themselves, as well as the bureaucrats. Do they have the right skills? Do they have the right education to deliver? But importantly, there is the issue of empathy. Without empathy, I think it is difficult to deliver for the people. You must have empathy that you are in a position of influence, and that influence must be used to deliver for the goods and services that the people desire. And in this process, I must mention, we have worked very well with the Chandler Institute of Governance. We have received support around capacity building for the public service, but also in institutions such as ours, to focus on what is the last mile move you have to make to ensure that you help people rise. In this case, ensure that access to health is available. What instruments do you need to put in place on the legal provision side, on the actual implementation of the program to be put in place? That way, definitely, you enhance the issue of governance. So as an implementing agency, again, we have the direct accountability to the people. If people go to a facility, health facility, and there are no drugs, the equipment is not working, we immediately get the feedback, which the politicians may not be able to get. So we, at that point, really must ensure that we properly translate the vision of the politics, the policy, to ensure that it meets the expectations of the public. And that's where capabilities have to be focused on.
Thank you very much. So we are going to open it up for the last round. This will be the last round that we are going to be opening up, both online and here. So if I can see the last batch of hands, and so you'll be the first one, madam. You'll be the second one, and that would be, and then you will be the last one. Thank you very much. In that order.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Friends, my name is Musima Gwangwa. I work in the Department of Public Service and Administration. I'd like to start by appreciating the briefs provided, and I just want to start by asking a simple question to us Africans to say. Humanity has been a buzzword, but when are we going to start appreciating the value of MNE? And I want to come and say, money is spent conducting evaluations or commissioning evaluations, but are we implementing and appreciating the outcomes of the evaluation? And when are we going to desist from saying, as administrators, I cannot take a negative report or outcomes to my EA
MNE is meant to improve. If we're not appreciating the negatives, how do we then see ourselves improving? Secondly, I want to say we have abundance of information on the state of performance within the African countries from various indexes. I can count the Mo Ibrahim Transparency International and today the CGGI, including our most loved APRM. How are we using the outcomes to guide our planning based on our capabilities? We have our visions. And the one thing that I personally feel is that if we get these outcomes, we look at our priorities in our visions, and we look at the outcomes in our annual reports and say, with the citizens, what then becomes the priority of us in making sure that as we, the government, collectively with people, come to walk towards the journey of actually closing the negative gap of assumption of us as government not performing, but staying with the citizens. This is the priorities that come in as the inefficiencies. And this is how we collectively working towards improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Debbie Israel, and I am a second-year LLB student at the University of Pretoria. So I want to raise a concern that I have in the education indicator. I want to take it back, and I'm going to use most of my experiences and how I've observed the education sector. I remember when I was 5 years old, my dream was to become the president of the Republic of South Africa. And you know, because I had a mindset which was open to possibility. I was not yet exposed to a society that does not believe in dreaming big. So now my concern is also in the basic education, which I'm no longer in. What is the point of us learning about clouds and flowers and everything? We are not necessarily taught about leadership and what we can do to contribute to our nation. We are not taught about, or rather we're not equipped to understand the things that we could do to better our nation. Rather, we are taught that we should go to school so that we are not poor because of our fathers and mothers who unfortunately lived in a time when things were tough. So most of my teachers back in high school would just tell you that if you want to have money, become a doctor, become a what. And I met one of my teachers last year and he was like, what are you studying? I said, law. And he was like, what a waste of potential. You should have studied medicine because you're smart. And I was like, I don't have the idea or the passion to become a doctor. I want to become a lawyer because I'm so interested and invested to change my nation in the law sector. But unfortunately for them, like I said before, it's all about just having money as an individual and living a basic life where you get married, have kids, then you die and you leave your estate to your kids. Then the same cycle repeats itself again. So we also, as the young people, unfortunately, due to the comfort we have, because our fathers fought for us and mothers, The comfort makes us not think bigger or allow ourselves to equip the nation with better results. Like, we are not about transformation. We are not about expanding the nation as a young people. But I blame the people who also made us have a poor mentality, because poverty is a mindset. It's not really not having money, it's a mindset. So we have been taught that poverty is alienated or it's killed by you just having a degree. But I would also like to conclude with the fact that the influences we have today do not influence our people to strive for education. They influence people that if you have a dream, don't go to school. But school for me is a place where I'm also taught morals, to be a better person to other people, because I'm with people who are outside my family by blood relations who I love. So I'm with people who actually teach me life while I don't owe them anything or any type of love, wherein they grow my emotional intelligence and also just learning through other people. So we have a youth which does not even know their weaknesses and strengths, because they're just told to go do something. So they don't know their personalities, whether they're a choleric person, whether they're phlegmatic, and so on and so on. They don't know what they stand for. So about the influences I was talking about, we're influenced to be people who are for the society. We are taught to promote things that are unethical if you look at them. Most of the people that I spend time with or observe from a distance are all about liberation, but the liberation is actually a fault in nature, because it makes them go back or regress without thinking to go somewhere in life. So if we are saying the youth of today are the leaders of tomorrow, how then do we teach them to be leaders? How then do we equip them to understand things? I'm probably one of the youngest people in this room. Where are my colleagues at school? Why are they not learning about these things? Thank you.
And then speaker, but you're okay, you're withdrawing. Oh, thank you. No problem. So I'm going to ask our panelists to say the last words. I'm going to start with Dr. Lekaba, because I delivered his at Naidu in the last round. And then we'll be followed by Ms. Bakari, and then Ms. Mono, and then we move towards closure.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Chair. And thanks for retaining me to serve second term from this part. The question of MNE and improvement is very important. When you read the government produces 5-year reviews, right? Every 5 years, there's a review of all departments and the report is produced. If you read the first 5 years, the issues that are highlighted there, and you read the recent one, as I said.
Yes. Yes.
Why is that so? Do we need, the only question that I think was, do we need a national dialogue to resolve this? So, I think when I started speaking here, I spoke about the importance of leadership, foresight, and institutions. And the point I was making was, leadership and institutions should perform side by side at a high level for us to be able to help people rise out of poverty, financial stewardship, and all of that. So leadership must provide the foresight, the ethics and everything, and the institution must come and set parameters of excesses of power and all of that. And I argued the point that it has to be vertical and horizontal. So somebody who wants to be a politician and starts from the branch must know that their capability, the importance of their capability is equal as somebody who's serving at the national level across all political parties. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm a political scientist. I read most of their reports and analyze them. It doesn't make sense. The three dominant parties, the EFF, the ANC, the DA, all of them talk about branches. In their reports, they talk about the quality of the branches and how the branches needs to be worked and all of them. But you don't see it, honestly. We don't see, forget about institutions now when we transfer these cadres into institutions, forget about that. Just the quality of the leadership at the branch and what the branch can do. Can the branch be able to articulate issues of what I am? Can the branch be able to have a discussion on this that you are having here? Can a branch leader lead this discussion? Then how does that branch leader arise to be a provincial leader and national leader if at the branch you couldn't articulate these issues? So this is, I think, is something we take very for granted. Everywhere, even at the university where I am, the issue of leadership is a problem. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a big problem. Even at the school where I am, leadership is a big problem. We reflect on it. That having a PhD does not qualify you to be a leader. Capability and capacity that the Maja that you're talking about. So and for us to be able to then talk of high performance and all of that, it means that we set high everywhere, every aspect of our society. And the issue of now representation, the question that a democracy index is asking, what about representative democracy? At the conference I was making a point, and this is my parting shot. I said to colleagues, you are wrong. If I know that the Maja is going to represent me, and I know he has the capability to represent me, and he's going to champion my interest, I'm happy to be at home and at the Maja to be at the national level. We do that everywhere. In trade unions, everywhere. If you know that somebody's, in fact, from here, we can maybe even test it. Somebody may say, we vote Ligaba to go and represent us on this and this and this. Because of what I may have demonstrated before you as a barometer of leadership. So the bar is low in terms of leadership, ladies and gentlemen. The bar is low in terms of strong institutions. Meeting the auditor, taking all of those for editor reports, it's fine. Municipality has performed. But did you deliver services is another thing. But yes, we are happy this mayor from this municipality, clean audits. Of course, for financial stewardship, yes, but what about leadership in terms of changing complexity, addressing complexity? So that's my parting shot, that Maja. We need to lift the bar high, and we must lift it in such a way that even myself, when I'm nominated, I must be able to say, no, I can't stand for the Suri. Maybe that Maja can represent me better. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And there are very good questions and, of course, comments coming out from the attendees. Maybe I will start to respond from Musima's comments, but also connecting from the students related to, of course, as you just presented, monitoring and evaluation aim at improving on what you are doing, even at a family level. You do M&E for improving. So even the government would do M&E for improving its policies, programs, but also the way they deliver the services to their citizens. So sometimes if you find the M&E reports, M&E recommendations are not used for improving or are not used to inform budgeting, inform other plans, then that is a wastage. Actually, evaluation, as you said, needs a lot of money. Conduct evaluations, but if you find the reports are kept on the shelves and they are not used, then that one is called a wastage. And for us in Tanzania, because as I've said, we used to have, of course, evaluations and of course monitoring of programs and projects, but it as we do today. So we expect a lot that will be coming out in the of course 3 to 5 years. We see a lot of changes with the results of having MNE units and heavy MNE champions from the local government levels, because the focus is on local government levels, because that is where the citizens are. At the top, we are here only policymakers, but most of the challenges are there at the local government. That's why we are putting more efforts to empower local government. And of course, sometimes I also ask myself if there is a lot of international reports, like you mentioned, the Mo Ibrahim reports, speaks a lot of things, a lot of recommendations for to use in the countries and government. Of course, some of them, they are taken on board when we are planning. And of course, some of them, I don't know, maybe because of the issue of some of the reports are politicized, I can say, because some they use it as a stepping stone to go somewhere or to showcase something that can give them powers. So MNE sometimes need to be taken as technical, more than technical than political, because most of political people, politicians, I can say, sometimes they only want reports for their own gain. But us as bureaucrats, we want to use the MNE reports to improve our program and progress. So sometimes you will find you cannot share the really findings to your boss or to the decision makers, because you are also looking at your future. How am I going to be looked at? So sometimes politics hinder a lot to bureaucrats when it comes to deliver the real results coming out from the intervention that have been done to different programs. And connecting to a student on the education systems, yes, I really agree with you. Some of the education systems in our countries are not aimed at improving our lives. We are only using it just to make us having a day survival, but not thinking of the future. Because even Tanzania, now the focus from the Ministry of Education, they give a lot of course, they did a lot of evaluations of the education system, and we have come out with a new education policy that focus on vocational training, because we want also to reduce the challenge of unemployment with the youth, because most of the youth now are struggling with employment. They don't have a clear guidance on what to do. So with the current policy has just paved the way on how the youth also can benefit from involved in vocational training, employing themselves. So the environment for youth now is like improved by having policies and a lot of mechanisms. And then we have another initiative known as Building Better Tomorrow. It's a program for youth to empower them through agriculture, livestock keeping, and of course fisheries, because agriculture also is one of the largest area that employing a lot of youth. So instead of making the youth coming up to urban areas, they can keep on staying in the village, but they are giving the facilities, they are guided to do a modern agriculture for economic improvement. So such programs now, they need to be embedded from our school syllabuses, because previously it was not there. So we think education systems matters to empower our generations. And that's why now you can find some of the CEOs coming out from being the CEOs and coming to the political side, because they see this is where the life is. But if we break those narratives and make them use, of course, having the system that is not using, is not being influenced by politics to do business, then it will help even the CEOs who will remain to their chairs and they will not think of coming to the politics where the money is.
I want to conclude also by giving an example on of capability issues, as the focus need to be on how we improve people's lives. Like 2 months back, when we went for our, of course, we do like verification visits sometimes to our reports to see if what have been reported from the systems is really existing from the ground. So we went to one of the schools and asked one of the student, secondary school student, and asking how do they see the project. And one of the good comments it kept on recalling to my mind that she was saying, I had that dream of studying science, but because when I came here Form 1, there was no science teachers. But now with the program, we have got 2 teachers for science. So my dream to be a scientist is now coming very well. So you can see someone is not even know about our project, but thinking of her future of becoming a scientist. So that's the best thing that the government needs to do to ensure our citizens for their future, that at the end, what their inspiration are going to be seen in their life, but not only keeping of developing good policies. Also, another example is when we were collecting comments on our Vision 2050 last year. Of course, there was a link on which the citizen can share their comments on the Tanzania they want. So I normally every morning I put that link to my status, WhatsApp status, so people they can go and write their comment. So one of my friend, of course, said, Sakina, you keep putting this link. You don't know our problems. We only want water. We want good education. We want good health services. We want energy. We want the affordable energy. So just sit and write us a very good vision for Tanzania. You know what we want. You don't have to encourage us to write. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'll write on the comments from my colleague around politics. But my approach is that actually politics matters. It is at the center of everything. And I think for political scientists, for many commercial ethics, politics is the ultimate, science, everything else. So the price at which you will pay, the access to healthcare services, the provision of water and sanitation, all emanates from politics. So the quality of the people running the politics is as important as the services that you expect to get from there. So in the practice of M&E, we in government implement government policy. And government policy is a function of the policies of the party in power. So we cannot delink ourselves from the politics. We have to accept and appreciate the visions of those in power and translate them to achieve their ultimate objective. In any case, they're governing because they made a promise to the public that they will deliver ABC, and it is our role to translate that and deliver on their behalf. So a pragmatic approach we take is, well, you promise people free health care, but the practice from your policy is that there is no free health care because the evidence is clear. Therefore, for you to deliver free health care, as per your promise, you have to execute A, B, C, D. That's how we use our M&E to have candid discussions and hold the politics accountable, not only to the public, but also they help us to be held accountable to the public themselves. So through us, we're held also accountable to the public. But I must agree with the sentiments, really, that some of these policies and M&E plans, they become annual rituals, for example. Every year you have a good launch of a strategy of an M&E plan, and that becomes the end to itself. But the way we see ourselves as service providers is that there is an ultimate accountability to the public. So yes, we may tick the box that we have this great M&E plan, but what have we delivered to the public? And so by linking the delivery of service to the public to the politics, we kind of leverage and begin to nudge and push the politics to deliver for the good of the people. Because when they deliver for the good of the people, it's also good for the political staying power. So using that approach, we think we can achieve the objectives of politics, but importantly,
achieve the objective of the public in the provision of public goods and services. Now, in all this, of course, the role of leadership is supreme, and I want to agree with the student. But within the leadership space is the issue of integrity. It's not just leadership, but it's leadership with integrity that has the empathy, the vision, and the ambitions of the public. That you have been entrusted with this position, not so that you can have a good car and a good house, but that through that which has been entrusted, you will deliver on behalf of the people. And that calls for integrity. And certainly you need to raise the bar very high on the integrity space to ensure that you deliver all these things. Thank you.
Now, thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to thank the panelists and invite my colleague, Mr. Punsami, to thank them formally. We will now include you. Thank you. And then to close us off, I think my job is done here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dinesh, maybe before colleagues leave, we can just hand over. Whilst Dinesh is doing that, let me ask you to appreciate all of the panelists. They've done fantastic. Let's also acknowledge the moderator, Dr. Botshabelo Maja. I think he's also done a fantastic work. Let me also take the opportunity to appreciate the team that have been working behind the scenes, both from Chandler Institute of Governance and the National School of Government. There's been a lot of hard work that has gone in over the past few weeks in making sure that this event does take place. So all of the arrangements that have been made, really thank you to the team, both from the Chandler Institute as well as from the National School of Government, making sure that we are here today. Being the gracious host that I am, yes, you can give them a round. Being the gracious host that I am, I'm going to invite my colleague Dinesh to just say a few words of closure, and then we move to lunch. But thank you very much, colleagues, for your attendance here and for your participation.
Thank you, Dino. I know that I stand between you and lunch, so I will not take very long, but I want to echo the thanks to all our friends and colleagues, especially from the NSG, speaking from the CIG side. I want to thank the team as well, Kiara and Ethan, as well as our colleagues on the NSG side, especially Okani and Tiebo, and many others who have helped. So thank you very much. Thank you, audience, for participating today, for being engaged, for asking good questions, hard questions. And thank you especially to our speakers for that very intellectually stimulating and I think probing discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lunch is served, colleagues. Please have a great afternoon and continue with your network.
Yeah.